The ship waited at the dock like a floating palace, its windows glowing gold against the deep blue of the evening sky. Soft music drifted across the water, mixing with the distant calls of gulls and the low hum of engines, preparing for departure. Keanu Reeves paused for a moment at the bottom of the gangway, taking it all in. He'd been invited to plenty of events over the years, some loud, some crowded, some exhausting, but this one promised to be different, smaller, quieter. Birthday celebration on the water, just a few friends, good food, and the slow, calming rhythm of the sea. That was the plan, at least. He stepped aboard with a relaxed smile, nodding to the crew and exchanging easy greetings, with guests already gathering on deck. The air smelled faintly of salt and polished wood. String lights were draped along the railings, and a long table near the center had been set with glasses that caught the light like tiny stars. At the far end, covered carefully with a cloth, sat what was clearly the birthday cake, large, ambitious, and waiting for its moment. Keanu found a quiet spot near the railing and set his jacket over the back of a chair. He liked being early to things. It gave him time to breathe before the room filled up, time to let the mood settle. The ocean stretched out beside the ship, dark and calm, with the last hints of sunset fading into purple and gray. Somewhere behind him, someone laughed, and the sound carried easily in the open air. The host, a longtime friend, came over, beaming, and thanked him again for coming. "No speeches," he promised with a grin. "That's exactly what I'm here to do." Felt good, simple, light, the kind of evening that didn't ask for anything complicated. Keanu chatted with a few people he hadn't seen in a while, listened more than he talked, and kept drifting back to the railing to watch the water. He had that quiet sense that comes when things are going well, when the world seems to be moving at a comfortable pace for once. But there were small signs, barely noticeable at first. The ship shifted now and then, just a little more than expected. A glass trembled on the table before someone steadied it. A guest laughed and said, "Feels like we're getting more waves than promised." It was said as a joke, and everyone treated it like one. Later, as the music grew a bit louder and the lights seemed a bit brighter, the host clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "All right," he announced, "we're about to bring out the cake. And I need our special guest up here for a moment." A few people turned toward Keanu. Someone started recording on their phone. He felt a familiar, gentle pressure, the kind that comes with being noticed, and smiled, lifting his hands in mock surrender. "Just for a second," the host said. "I promise." Keanu stepped forward, still relaxed, still thinking this would be nothing more than a quick toast and a few laughs. He didn't notice the slightly stronger roll of the ship beneath his feet. The music softened into a steady, cheerful rhythm as the guests formed a loose half circle around the center of the deck. Someone dimmed the lights just enough to make the string bulbs glow warmer, and a quiet excitement settled over the group, the kind that comes before a surprise everyone thinks they're ready for. The cloth was lifted from the cake, revealing a tall, carefully decorated masterpiece, and a small wave of applause rolled across the deck. Keanu found himself gently guided forward by smiling hands and encouraging voices. He laughed, a little embarrassed, and shook his head. "It's not my birthday," he said, but the host just grinned and pointed to an empty spot beside the table. "Doesn't matter," he said. "You're part of the moment." Phones came up. Someone called out for everyone to squeeze closer. The camera lights blinked on and off like tiny stars. Keanu stood there, hands loosely at his sides, feeling that familiar mix of warmth and awkwardness that came with unexpected attention. He gave a small wave, then rested one hand lightly on the edge of the table, careful not to get too close to the cake. The ship moved beneath them, just a gentle sway at first, like a slow breath. He barely noticed it. Most people didn't. The ocean was calm, and the evening had been smooth so far. The host lifted a glass to start a toast, clearing his throat and launching into a few heartfelt words about friendship, time, and the strange ways life brings people together. Keanu listened, smiling, nodding at the right moments. He felt relaxed, even grateful. This was easy. This was harmless. He shifted his weight slightly, more out of habit than need, and glanced around at the faces turned toward him, some familiar, some new, all friendly. Then the ship rolled again. A little more this time. It wasn't dramatic, just enough to make the floor feel briefly uncertain, like stepping off a curb you didn't see. A few glasses chimed softly against each other on the table. Someone laughed and said, "Okay, that one I felt." The host paused, then kept going, lifting his glass higher to finish the toast. Keanu adjusted his stance, placing his feet a bit wider apart. He'd spent enough time on boats to know how to move with them. He felt steady again and relaxed his shoulders. The moment stretched, warm and bright. Cameras still pointed at him, the cake waiting like a centerpiece in a painting. "All right," the host said, turning toward him with a grin. "Say something." Just a few words. Keanu opened his mouth to reply, and at that exact second, the ship met a slightly stronger wave. Not a big one. Not dangerous. Just enough to change everything. The floor shifted under Keanu's feet with a confidence that belonged entirely to the ocean and not at all to him. For a split second, his body did what it always tried to do: correct, compensate, pretend nothing was happening. He took a quick step back, then another, trying to find the rhythm of the ship again. It didn't work. His heel caught the edge of a loose cable near the table, and suddenly balance became a suggestion instead of a fact. His arms lifted instinctively, palms open, in that universal gesture that means, "I've got this." "No, wait, I really don't." Someone gasped. Someone else laughed, thinking it was part of a joke. Keanu bumped into the table, not hard, but hard enough. The impact traveled like a message. Glasses trembled. A drink tipped and spilled in a bright, dramatic arc across the white tablecloth. The cake, magnificent and innocent just seconds earlier, began to lean. There was a moment of perfect, suspended silence. Then gravity made its decision. The cake slid, slowly at first as if reconsidering, then faster. The top layer shifted, the decorations gave way, and with a soft, terrible thump, it tipped onto its side, smearing frosting and cream across the table and down onto the deck. A couple of plates followed. A fork clattered. Someone's phone captured the exact second it happened, complete with a shaky, startled laugh in the background. Keanu managed to grab the edge of the table and steady himself, but the damage was already done. He stood there, frozen, staring at the mess frosting on the cloth, a glass rolling to a stop, the once perfect cake now looking like a defeated sculpture. For half a heartbeat, no one said anything. Then the deck filled with sound. A mix of surprised shouts, nervous laughter, and a few dramatic, "Oh no." Someone clapped a hand over their mouth. Someone else started laughing so hard they had to lean on a chair. The host stared at the scene, then looked at Keanu, then at the cake again, as if trying to decide whether this was real. "I am so sorry," Keanu said, the words coming out a little faster than usual. His ears felt warm. He gestured helplessly at the table, at the cake, at the clear evidence of what had just happened. The ship moved and that's my fault. A bit of frosting had landed on his sleeve. He noticed it and tried to brush it off, only to smear it slightly. That somehow made it worse. For a second, he considered the urge everyone has in moments like this to disappear, to rewind time, to become invisible. But instead, he let out a small, helpless laugh of his own. "Guess I really made an entrance," he added. The host blinked, then started to laugh too. Not a polite laugh. A real one. The kind that spreads. And just like that, the most carefully planned moment of the evening had turned into something no one would forget. The crew moved in quickly, professional and calm, as if cake disasters were just another part of life at sea. Napkins appeared. Someone brought a fresh cloth. Another person carefully rescued what was left of the cake, lifting it like a wounded but still hopeful survivor. The guests stepped back to make room, still smiling, still talking over one another about how perfectly timed it had all been. Keanu stood there for a moment, unsure where to put his hands, his eyes following the cleanup like he was watching a slow, unavoidable replay. The initial rush of laughter faded into softer, kinder voices. "Hey, it happens," someone said, giving him a light pat on the shoulder. "Honestly, that was kind of amazing," another added, still grinning. The host came over, shaking his head but smiling. "You know," he said, "I've thrown a lot of parties. No one's ever given me a moment like that." "I'll pay for the cake," Keanu said immediately. 2 cakes. 3, if necessary. That only made the host laugh more. "Relax. It's a birthday, not a museum exhibition." Still, the warmth and the jokes didn't completely erase the tight feeling in Keanu's chest. He excused himself and walked toward the railing, needing a little air, a little space where he wasn't the center of a story being retold in excited fragments. Out on the edge of the deck, the night was calm again. The water stretched dark and endless, broken only by the ship's wake and distant reflections of light. The breeze was cool against his face, and he rested his hands on the railing, breathing a little slower. He replayed it in his head, the step, the cable, the slow, terrible tilt of the cake. It was ridiculous, really. No one was hurt. Nothing truly important was lost. And yet the embarrassment lingered, that stubborn feeling that comes from knowing you'll be remembered for a moment you never meant to create. Behind him, the party slowly found its rhythm again. Music returned. Conversations picked up. Somewhere, someone was already telling the story with bigger hand gestures and better timing. The host joined him at the railing after a while. "You okay?" Keanu nodded. "Yeah, just processing my new career as a cake destroyer." The host laughed and leaned on the rail beside him. "Give it 10 minutes. It'll be a legend." Keanu smiled at that, a small, genuine one. The ocean moved steadily beside them, unconcerned with human embarrassment, carrying the ship forward as if nothing unusual had happened at all. He stayed there a bit longer, letting the cool air and the steady motion of the water smooth out the edges of the moment. Sooner or later, he knew he'd have to go back. When Keanu finally headed back toward the center of the deck, the party had found a new, lighter rhythm. Someone had put on a more upbeat song, and a few guests were already laughing again, plates in hand, as the crew brought out a smaller replacement cake. It wasn't as tall or as fancy, but it had candles, and more importantly, it had survived the journey from the kitchen. The host spotted Keanu and raised his glass. "Careful, everyone," he announced with a grin. "We're letting him near the table again." A ripple of friendly laughter moved through the group. Keanu lifted both hands in mock surrender. "I've been officially banned from standing within 1 meter of desserts," he said. "For everyone's safety." That did it. The tension that had lingered in the air finally broke, and the laughter this time was easy, warm, and shared. He stepped forward, a little more carefully than before, and added, "But seriously, thank you for not throwing me overboard. I appreciate the mercy." The host clapped him on the shoulder. "You gave us the best story of the night. That's worth more than any perfect cake." They lit the candles, and everyone sang slightly off-key, a little too loud and completely sincere. The birthday wish was made, the candles were blown out, and this time the cake stayed exactly where it was supposed to. Later, as people ate and talked, the earlier disaster turned into a story that grew funnier with every retelling. Keanu found himself laughing about it too, especially when someone showed him a short video clip of the exact moment he started to lose his balance. He shook his head, smiling. I really committed to that, didn't I? The night stretched on in a comfortable way. Conversations drifted from one group to another. The ship moved steadily across the dark water, and the city lights were now just a distant glow on the horizon. At one point, Keanu found himself back at the railing, but this time he wasn't hiding. The host and a few others joined him, talking about nothing important and everything at once. The awkward moment had turned into something better, a shared memory, a reason for people to laugh together. As the party slowly wound down and guests began to gather their things, Keanu felt lighter than he had earlier. Embarrassment, he realized, didn't have to be the end of a good night. Sometimes it was just the beginning of a better story. And this one, he knew, would be told for a long time, preferably with a safe distance from the cake.